Hey, welcome to Social Proof, a podcast about influence brought to you by Soapbox. I'm Beth.
I'm Nate.
And we are really excited to be with my dear friend, Katherine Wintsch today. Hi, Katherine.
Hi.
It's so good to see you.
So
I guess hear you.
Yeah. It feels like we're close.
I know, it does. It does. So we're really excited to dive into just you and your story and your book and all the amazing things that you're doing. And it's kind of neat because, as you know, you and I've been connected for a while. We've got these sort of two worlds of big brands and shopper marketers who we work with every single day. And then all of these influencers all over the US. And we are matchmakers between, these two entities. And I think your work and your story is just relevant for every single one of those listeners. So we're excited to have you on.
Great.
Well, tell us a little bit about you. Who is Katherine? What's your story? And how did you get to where you are today?
Well, let's see. Born and raised in Richmond, Virginia.
Yes. Tell us everything.
I'm like, oh gosh, what do I pick? Okay, so born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. And I spent 20 years of my life pretty broken on the inside, despite being rather put together on the outside. So that was age 15 to 35. And I was a people pleaser and I was an overachiever. And I drew my self-esteem from external sources in the world. And then it, almost killed me. And I finally got my act together and slayed what I refer to as my dragon of self-doubt. And life on this side is a lot better. It's calmer. It's more normal. I feel whole. I feel deeply fulfilled. And that was not my existence for 20 years. So I'm remarkably proud of that. I'm helping other women do the same thing. And I have two beautiful children, 11 and 13, and I'm married to an extraordinary man. So that's who I am.
I love that. And we are going to add into the show for everyone a moment to watch the video which you've shared with us. And it's just extremely heart-stopping and compelling. I think I've probably seen it half a dozen times now, and I don't think I ever hold back the tears. And just talk to us a little bit about the work you're doing with women and that story.
Yeah, so many years ago, we decided to do a lot of research with women all around the world, and mothers in particular, but women as well. And we uncovered the fact that the number one emotion we all had in common was self-doubt. And I certainly had been living that way for 20 years, as I mentioned. And so it really struck a chord with me. And just started to study self-doubt and understand myself and other, human beings. And one of the things that my research was revealed was the horrible things that as women we say to ourselves when no one is listening. And so there's this negative voice in our head that's like, you're fat, you're ugly, it's a miracle your husband loves you. I mean, it's just really cutthroat and ugly. And so that's what we did a video about. And we recruited moms to come to be in a video, but they did not know what the video was about. We just said it was a video put on by the Mom Complex. And so they came in, and unaided, we asked them to write down the last terrible thing that they said to themselves. And they then had to read that statement out loud to another mother. And it's quite hard if you're not aware of the negative voice in your head. It's quite startling to realize that these things that you say to yourself and how ugly they are, and then to have to say it out loud, it's a very emotional video.
It is. And I think what's interesting about it is that you sort of direct, these women direct their words to themselves toward another woman. They are speaking them to someone, and they're realizing, I would never speak to another human in this way. So, your point is, well, why would you speak to yourself in that manner? So talk a little bit about, you mentioned the Mom Complex, which is the company that you run. And then you've sort of segued from your work with the Mom Complex into, I think, almost yielding everything that you've pulled out of that work that has come together here in your book, Slay Like a Mother. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the Mom Complex is a consulting company I started 10 years ago, which is crazy to me. And we help mostly Fortune 500 companies develop better products and programs for mothers. They're mom customers. So a lot of CPG, retail, etc. And so we've, for a decade, have been studying the consumer-facing lives of women and mothers, but we wanted to study their full lives of what life was like, and were they happy, or were they depressed, or what was it like outside of pushing a shopping cart inside of a store. And that's where a lot of the rich insights around self-doubt, that's where it came from. And so at the Mom Complex, we have a great ability to get to the truth, to get to it quickly, because we're all moms ourselves, and we know that life's not perfect, and we don't put up with that in research. A lot of mothers, that's the problem, and it's why I started the Mom Complex, is in consumer research, like a focus group, a mom's going to show up and tell you she's perfect and her husband's amazing, and her children eat broccoli 3 meals a day, and it's a lot of lies, and it's a lot of posturing. So what a waste of money.
Right.
So that's fun, because we just help tell companies the truth.
Yeah, I love that. And I know Nate and I were talking about, he was discussing the book with his wife last night. I won't tell that story. It's his story. But I think it's so interesting that your work has really honed in on this idea of, attacking that fear and slaying those dragons. In fact, in your honor, I know you probably can't see them, but I have on, I'll send you a picture. I have my Rockstar sneakers on. I've got these Nike leopard print, like they're very loud, they're very obnoxious, sneakers on. And on the back of one shoe, it says fear. And on the back of the other, it says less. And I love these shoes. You cannot wear them without feeling like a badass, honestly. And as we were moving into having you on the show today, I was like, well, these feel like Katherine sneakers, so I have to put them on for this convo. But Nate and I were talking a little bit last night about your book, and I think he was discussing it with his wife, and I want to just kick it over to him to chat with you a little bit more about that.
Great. Yeah. And I have to point out, I'm not drinking a beer, for anybody that's actually watching.
Yeah, I'm the one who thought it was a beer. It looks refreshing, but
I think, I've been married 10 years, and this journey of self-doubt is very real for all of us. And I think, the book is, obviously geared towards women and motherhood. But, I think, obviously men face the same thing. Maybe we hide it with our bravado, or we hide it with our kind of macho, esque, or bigger trucks, or whatever it is. But I think, there's a lot of self-doubt, even in my own personal life too. So I'm curious for you, Katherine, like what was how were you able to overcome it when so many of us, maybe don't even realize or recognize it in ourselves? Like, what was the difference for you that kind of spurred this whole journey for yourself?
Yeah, I would say that, a big turning point, you have to get to the point that you just can't take it anymore. People often say it was brave what I did, and learning to love myself and stop hating on myself. But I was really done, and I was really exhausted. And no matter what I did, what I achieved, working 80 hours a week, I still didn't feel good enough. And so, I tell everybody, you have to just hit that point where you're like, I cannot work and try to prove myself anymore, or I'm going to die,
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to hit that wall, I believe, and not everybody's there yet, which is okay, but you're just kind of taking in little nuggets of knowledge right now. You see things, somebody like me says something, and you're like, oh, I felt like that before. There's little clues. And then you really just have to do the hard work and the homework. And it wasn't easy. And it was a lot of time. And it was probably 2 years of my life of reading self-help books, watching almost every Oprah episode, lots of therapy. I've been through lots of therapy in my life. I can't recommend it enough. And so I basically took myself on as a project, and I learned about myself. I wanted to understand myself, what made me happy, what made me upset, what made me exhausted, what made me energized. And I did all that work. And now that I know myself, I know how to make myself happy, and I know how to reduce my frustrations in life because I've studied myself. And I think it's a shame how much we know about a lot of different subjects and we don't know anything about ourselves.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like for me, the thought of writing a book just seems like it's like not even the realm of possibility for me. It's not in my wheelhouse, not in my mindset. So for you, is writing this book something that you've always wanted to do, or was it like I should write a book, or it's like, oh, I must write a book? Like how did that kind of journey start for you?
I never, ever, ever would have thought I would have been an author. I never dreamed about it. I do now consider myself a good writer. I think the book is very good. I think it's much better than I thought it was going to be. And I think it's well written, but I never really fancied myself, a great writer. It just wasn't, part of my attributed skill set, to myself. But anyway, just on the personal side, I was so exhausted, so overwhelmed, living with this dragon of self-doubt. I went through all the work. I slayed the dragon, and I had the keys to the kingdom to teach women how to do the same thing because it worked. Like, I'm not a magician. I didn't wave a magic wand. I didn't wake up one day and all of a sudden, figure out how to like myself and enjoy my own company and say no to other people and yes to myself. So it's, once you can get through that, but it's work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you probably had very much an obligation to not keep those things to yourself. And I can see where
it felt selfish.
Yeah.
It felt my life so wholeheartedly changed. And then I was giving speeches about it, and that was rewarding, and it would be 100 people at a time, 300 people, and that was great. But I wanted it to be a manual. Like, I wanted people to have something to be like, okay, I know how to slay, I know how to do this, and a book can do that.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I think it goes so far. I think the book is that necessary manual and centerpiece to what you've learned. It's where you've put down those learnings. But you really have built, I think, this whole, I don't want to say lifestyle, but all of these elements, you do still, you're hired by companies to come in and talk about how they interact with moms and how they interact with women, or how their women within, the company itself can be supported and bring more of their better selves to work with these tools. I've seen you lead workshops. You on your website, you do some really cool work, and you've got a great newsletter where you share slays from real women. I've been through one of your amazing workshops, and I can't recommend it enough. And so I feel this, like, I'm a marketer at heart, right? But I feel this compulsion to take your story and book and workshops and, all of the things that I think you've built and put together, and get this book into the hands of everyone I can. I shove it at everyone, literally, I think. So can you talk? You're welcome. Can you talk a little bit about some of those other pieces of your work, and maybe how listeners can, certainly we want them to grab the book and absorb all of the things that you share, but what are some of the other resources that you offer?
Well, one of the neat things about both Slay Like a Mother and the Mom Complex is we are subject matter experts on mothers, and we study mothers all day, every day, all around the world in real time, using apps and really fun, technology. And so To your point, on the corporate side, we just did a big workshop for a digital one, like a webinar for Walmart's Career Mom resource group. So working mothers there. And so that can be a way to have companies do say like a mother workshop for their working mothers is really extraordinary. And then on the, marketing side, we're working with Sam's Club right now to improve the shopping and in-club and online experience for big families. And then on the Slay Like a Mother side, I mean, to your point, signing up for our newsletter, it's a great way to see how other people are slaying, because as a woman, or anybody, as a human being, when you see other wins that people are putting on the board, let's just duplicate those. Let's just say, oh, that looks like that worked. And so that's what we like about this idea of slays, is we're sharing little things that you could pick up and just duplicate, just steal it.
Yeah, you literally are taking those things. I remember I've seen it both in the newsletter and on your website, but also physically in the workshop with, a room full of women and their Post-it notes. And you talk about these slays, and they were everything from how they get dinner on the table. I mean, they were life hacks, right? And they were hacks. They were really, you kind of think that they're going to be all of these sort of, I don't know, predictable things, right? Like, that we all have that manual to life, but every single one I saw was like, mind blowing. So talk about that a little bit more.
Well, I'll give you an example of one. So we want to share things that other women can just go, oh, I can steal that. I can do that. Because as women, and I guess as human beings too, we keep trying to accomplish all these problems from scratch, starting from scratch, as if nobody else has struggled. So I'll give you an example of a slay that I heard the other day that I was like, Jesus. A friend of mine was like, wanted to make sure her children knew, teenage boys knew, that she owned the phone, like it was hers and they were getting to use it, and wanted to remind them. So every Christmas, she wraps up like a piece of paper that's the total cell phone bill for the year, like the usage, not like the minutes on top, but just the plan. And it's basically $1,000 because they have to pay, Right. And so she's like, Merry Christmas. And, and then he gets like, a couple sweaters or something, but she was like, it's $1,000 Christmas present. It reminds him who owns the phone. It also reminds him that life is not free, and we're not just, getting a grand taken out of our paychecks for you to not be grateful for it. And I thought, oh my gosh, like everybody needs to do that.
I'm like, note to self.
I know. It's like,
and the Spotify and the, Netflix.
Yeah, wrap them
I'm like,
all up.
Yes, my child is getting a bill now, and I'm going to let her know she has you to thank. Exactly.
Yes, you just say you're welcome. Yeah, so it's little things like that. It's fun.
I love that. I mean, they really are. I hope women and men will go out to your website. I think it's so, I'm just, again, marketing you. I can't help myself, but I just think it's all so well laid out. Like, you are building this blueprint and this roadmap, and not everyone's a reader, right? But you are equipping them and putting these tools out into the wild, and which kind of leads to my next question. We are an influencer agency, and so we work with these people every day who, like yourself, in different ways have really, built a brand, built an empire. And we are very passionate about understanding, like, what does influence mean, right? We all have influence, but how can you wield it with integrity? And, your influence may not be, being this, 100,000 count followers on Instagram, but you wield influence in a number of ways. And I'm curious what's non-negotiable for you around your personal brand and just kind of what you stand for when you put yourself out into the world.
Yeah, it's a great question. I have some pretty stiff boundaries on work-life balance and what I'm willing to dedicate to a career and to a job, and that is marketing a book, and running a company. And so, even I'll give you an example. When I was signing up to be with like a speakers bureau, it's just like a machine, and they just want to pimp you out, all the time. And I was like, they were like, how many gigs can you do a year? And I was like, well, I'm not an animal. I'm a machine. Like, I need to sleep a lot, like I have a routine, and I finally found balance in my life, and I'm not going to screw it up now, And so I was like, I don't know, like, not even once a month. I want to
Yeah.
do 5 a year, but I want them to be extraordinarily meaningful. So I'm just more of a quality than a quantity
Mm.
when it comes to my own brand and my own time. And the Mom Complex is the same way. We're a successful consulting company, and we've reached a certain plateau of revenue. We have 8 employees, and like, we're done. Like,
Yeah.
we don't need more employees. We don't need, extra headaches and heart, like, we can make
Yeah.
enough money in a year to help really big companies do really cool things.
Yeah.
And we can go home and see our family.
Yeah.
And that's imperative to me. Like, I finally found balance, and there is nothing that is going to get in the way of that.
Yeah. It's amazing.
I always say on that front, like, my new philosophy after so much therapy and soul searching is that for me, more is a 4-letter word.
Mm.
And so always chasing more money, more employees, more book sales, more it doesn't work for me. It just, puts me in a hamster wheel real fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. So your company, the Mom Complex, is geared towards helping companies, right, better understand women, mothers. And then your book is geared toward mothers, right? And helping the mother. I'm curious, like, do you have a favorite story of, someone that, whose life has turned around or truly been touched, that kind of keeps you going and keeps that motivation up for you?
Yeah, I have a lot of those. I will go back to the target audience real quick, though, is that I believe that the message of Slay Like a Mother is universal for men, women, teenagers, senior citizens, gay, straight, non-binary, because the story behind Say Like a Mother is about self-doubt. And that is a human condition that, to your point earlier, Nate, a lot of people have and a lot of men have. Women tend to over-index in the self-doubt department, but a lot of men have a lot of self-doubt, and it really identify with this message. So a lot of the anecdotal stories, kind of emphasize motherhood, but it's interesting. A lot of women will read it and then they'll make their husbands read it because either the husband needs it, or some women have told me that, and this is a meaningful story too, it's like that she wanted her husband to read it because he would understand her better, because so much of this is just inner turmoil, and it's not obvious, and we all wear a mask and we all pretend like it's not going on. And so for a lot of people, they're like, oh crap, like, like, I didn't know that you were hemorrhaging self-esteem on the inside. But here's what I always say about wearing a mask is that everybody else might not know that you're wearing a mask, but you know that you're wearing a mask. And every time you lie and say you are okay when you're not, and that everything's fine, what you're saying to your soul is that the truth doesn't matter and your truth doesn't matter. Like, your soul hears it every time you posture and say everything's okay. And so that's an exhausting way to live.
It is.
So fake it till you make it's not your
well, I did it for a long time.
I think I say that to myself quite a bit, like, oh, just fake it till you make it.
No.
Well, and you're tapping into, going back for just a minute, again, Nate and I were talking a bit about the book last night, and he commented in so many words that it's very different from most of the kind of mom-oriented or women-oriented books he's seen, encountered. And what struck you about that, Nate?
It seemed like the language was just more straightforward and real.
Yeah. I agree.
That's, less kind of this flowery language and this kind of idealization of motherhood and, holy calling that motherhood is. And it seemed it seemed a lot more raw and real to me. Like, this is like what motherhood is really like,
Yeah. And I always wanted, when I first got the book deal, which was so exciting. And again, never thought I'd be an author. I mean, it was just so cool. I really wanted it, like, and you picture it like, you know, in a bookstore, like a book section. And I really wanted it to sit in self-help. Like, I didn't want it to sit in parenting. That was very important to me, because it's not a parenting book. This is not about, you can learn some tips and tricks that'll make you a better human, that therefore will make you a better parent. But that was important to me, that the framing of this was about self-help, you know, in general, that had a slant towards women and mothers, but that it shouldn't sit next to, you know, how to feed a 5-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It's interesting as well, because I think even on the other end of whatever spectrum you discuss, so the way I was raised was very confidence instilling. It's who I am. It's, you know, what my parents taught. And I don't think it's bravado or false confidence. It's just, and so I spent a number of years almost making excuses for that. Like, I'm sorry, I'm intense, or I come on strong, or I'm enthusiastic. It's very real. You know, I'm not feigning confidence. In fact, I always worry that I'm going to just storm the castle sometimes, and I have to like pull myself back into being a little softer. We were joking about this earlier. You know, being more caring. It's not that I'm not a caring person, but I think a lot of what you've done with Slay Like a Mother is just to kind of, you know, not in a therapeutic way, but just tell women, however you're wired, that's okay. Bring that. And I think your language in the book speaks to that. You know, I actually don't struggle as much with self-doubt as I do struggle with, you know, we all have our dragons, right? And that's what I enjoyed in your workshop around, you know, the mask wearing and the, you know, what we're telling ourselves, the lies that we're telling ourselves. They look very different for everyone. And so it, you know, it leads me to kind of ask you about, this may sound oversimplified, but, you know, the language you use, the brand that you convey in your writing and on social media. You know, we've got people listening who are either, you know, maybe they're marketers or shopper marketers by day, or they're leading companies, or maybe they're, you know, building a side brand as a fitness coach, or they're just trying to identify their voice. They're trying to identify their brand. So can you talk a little bit about how you've done that and what it is?
Yeah, that's so interesting. And it's so great. So I've done so many interviews about the book and my work in general, and no one's ever asked me that. That's such a great question. And I love branding so much. So it's so fun to talk about. So, I mean, a brand is everything. It's absolutely everything. And it sets the tone for who you are and how you're going to show up in the world. And it's definitive. It has edges, you know, it is this, it is not this. And so so the title came fairly late in the process. I had written the vast majority of the book. It was obviously about a dragon, and you were slaying this dragon. And we all knew that slay would probably be in the title, but we were really striking out with the title. And so the book is aggressive. I mean, it is about slaying and killing and taking down something that is trying to kill you.
Yes.
And it's what I love about that brand, and it was so intentional, is that I wanted it to be heroic, because what I did to slay this was heroic. Like, it was so life-changing. And in other previous book proposals, I felt like it was a little wimpy sounding, like, oh, I was so broken and then I healed myself. And it can be really sappy, like Nate, to your point too, about other books in this genre. Like, I did not want it to be that on the inside. So the fact that it wasn't that on the inside, the title became everything. And we had like Ready, Set, Slay, and like Slay Your Day. And they were all like, yeah. And then when we came up with Slay Like a Mother, I was like, that is it. And I was so new to being an author that I was like, who gets to decide? Like, what if the publisher doesn't like it? Like, who wins? I don't know. Do I have any power? Did they have all the power? You know? And I decided, and they eventually went with it. It was a few hiccups a little bit along the way, but they went with it. But I was like, I won't turn in the manuscript if this is not the title, because I felt so strongly. And then when you do, like, if let's just say you're doing a fitness thing, once you have that parameter that's aggressive, it's sharp, it's X, Y, Z.
Empowering.
It's empowering. Then when people, the reason you need a brand is then when people bring things to you, you know whether to say yes or no.
Yeah.
So when they brought me a pale pink cover to this book, I was like, under no circumstances is this book going to be pale pink. It's about slaying something. It's aggressive. Like, and so as a brand manager, your life becomes a lot easier when you have a brand to actually stand on, because you're not like, well, I don't know, do I like pink?
Yeah,
you know,
totally. I love that. And I think we've got the book here, if I can untangle myself from these cords, which I'm not accustomed to. But first, thank you for being so on brand with Soapbox, because you've got this teal that just, it looks striking on our bookshelf. We have several copies.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And the gold, I mean, to me, it just feels like literally the pieces falling of something that, you know, has been destroyed and rebuilt. And it's a wonderful work. And I love hearing the story behind that brand, because like you, I'm a pretty passionate marketer and wordsmith. But
one other thing about the brand that made me think about is I was really insistent that it didn't have a book jacket.
I hate
Thank
book
you.
Because book jackets, like they just get dirty, they fall
do.
off. I end up they get torn in my purse. I mean,
I pull them off right away.
That's what I do.
I'm so with you.
And then it's a plain book, and I thought, oh my gosh, if they take this was a jacket, and when it comes off, it would be just a white boarded book. I mean, that's terrible. And so that goes back to the brand. Like, then you can make things additive and even better, you know, where it's like, well, and this shouldn't be some wimpy cover that's going to get torn. I mean, this should be like a coffee table book. This is like a Bible, you know? And so that's another fun, you know, thing about having a brand.
I love that we unpacked that. That's the kind of thing
I know.
Like. So Katherine, like in this kind of marketing and vein, you know, how do you manage then? How do you kind of eschew the word more and still maintain that ambition and growth, you know, for your, you know,
that's a great question,
5-year, 10-year, you know, business strategy down the road? It seems like for us as marketers and salespeople, we're like always focused on more growth, more sales, more, you know, and you mentioned that earlier, kind of that's a 4-letter word for you. So how do you manage, you know, those kind of dual desires there?
Yeah, I think it has to be, there are instances I'm okay with more, but it would have to be like more impact, not more stress, you know, so you can start to get more nuanced with it. So, you know, for example, I've run a consulting company. The tendency is, okay, you did $1 million last year, you did $2 million this year, and then you're going to go to 5, you know. So from the outset, I said, even to my business advisor, I'm not doing that. I want to go to a plateau, and then I want to dance on the plateau. Because I'm tired of climbing with the pickaxe, you know, and so part of it is about setting goals. So don't set goals that you can't achieve, you know, these like ridiculous, like annual growth goals that like you're just starting out in the hole. Like it kills morale. Everybody's like, oh my God, we got to make $20 million this year. You know, and there's all this weight. And then you make 20 million the next year, like you got to make 25, you know, it's like, it's never enough. So for me, it was around setting the goals and making it clear to everybody that works for me, like that the mom complex is not a place like that all of a sudden you're going to get a landslide of like a raise and then get like 5 new employees to manage. Like we're not growing as a company. And so we're all like kind of at where we're at. But on top of that, it's unlimited vacation. You can work whenever, wherever. You're going to be deeply fulfilled. We don't work on the weekends. You know, we travel together. Or we used to, but and so you have to figure out what your currency is. So I still get that fulfillment of more because it's addictive and I'm an achiever, you know, and I want that, but it's more impact. Like we've started a program where we're accepting donated books, like a mother, we're giving them to incarcerated women around the world. And so like, that's not more money, but that's more life and impact and joy. And so just channel it to something. And this is just me, like for somebody else and plenty of people, more money is awesome. That's what they want. So just make sure you're going after the more that actually fulfills you instead of like everybody makes it about money. Even I got after my book proposal was rejected for 4 years by 23 publishers. In the end, I ended up getting 2 offers for advances from 2 different publishers. One was the number 2 publisher and one was the number 10. And I turned down the number 2 publisher and a much bigger advance because I wanted to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. I'd never been an author before. I'd never written a book. I was going to go to this like huge machine, and I was like, I don't know how to write a book, you know, and I wanted somebody to hold my hand, and I wanted to write what I wanted to write. And they had a different vision for this book. They wanted it to be called The Mom Complex. They wanted it to sit in the sociology department. And I was like, nope. And so I walked away from money in order to stay true to the message that I wanted to share.
No, that's so interesting. And it seems so rare in our space too, but from listening to it, just seems like it makes you way more deliberate about what you're going to take on and more thoughtful about the things that you're willing to go after. Whereas it seems like sometimes it's easy to just kind of chase anything that has potential, right? You know, and I love that mindset.
That's the
really
pickaxe. That's the pickaxe. And so what happened in my career was like, I had the pickaxe, I was climbing, always exhausted, you know, like white knuckling, like every new business meeting to try to get more money, you know, and, or more like Pizza Hut account or something. I mean, you know, like it just, we weren't curing cancer. Like it was advertising. But then you get to the top of like a pretty high mountain. It might not be the top, but then you're like, oh, this is the view. This is what I have. I have not been home in months. You know, I eat crap food. I never work out. I'm late to everything. You know, my children don't know who I am. And so then it's like, then you got to put on, you know, the grown-up pants and get off of that mountain and do something that's not, if that energy, plenty of people that works for.
Yeah, I do love that. I like what Nate said as well about it being so deliberate. And I know, you know, the extent of the self-work you've done, which is something I think we want to dig into here in just a minute. But I have one more kind of side note question around that, how deliberate you are. It's something that I really admire about you. And, you know, back when we traveled, right? If I was in town, if I was in the Richmond area, you could be darn sure I was going to commandeer your time. And I've always been, you know, I'm honored that when you do come to our neck of the woods, you know, you're usually going to send me a note. You're going to reach out and say, hey, let's catch up. Let's get a drink. And but I feel that you are very intentional about that, which is why I think I feel honored by it. It's not like, let me breeze into town and call everyone I know. And I think something that women struggle with, something that women are terrible at is, you know, we think we have to be liked by everyone. We think we have to have this roster of friends. And I certainly at 43, if not, you know, 10 years ago, started, I think really, you know, getting down to, you know, who fills me up. That's who gets my time, who, you know, where, if I am going to take energy away from my home and my husband and my family and my business, which I love building, I get a lot out of it, then, you know, it needs to be pretty reciprocal. And so I want to understand how, you know, choosy you are in those other parts of your life with relationships, and what does that look like, and what boundaries have you set for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, very choosy, mainly because I finally learned to give time to myself. And so I don't feel like I have to give it all away. In my previous version of myself, I was so empty on the inside that I had to go to external sources for my self-esteem. So that meant helping friends out more, you know, it meant doing this. It meant going out for, you know, drinks and fun. I mean, just all the things, or traveling, all the time. Yes. And so now that I can fill my own cup up, you know, more, and my self-worth comes from the inside instead of the outside, I don't give away as much of my time. And I tell women, you know, and men, if you have no time for yourself, if you look at your calendar, there's no time for yourself, it means you believe you don't deserve it. That's what it means. It means that you think that other people deserve your time more than you do. that you're not one of the humans that deserves your time. And so I no longer believe that. So I have less time to give away,
right.
which is fine because it's more quality.
It's intentional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that in you. And it's funny. I think you've sort of empowered a behavior I already had, which is when I do or did travel, I'm super selfish. I might have one person in a city who I want to see, but I'm also really excited to, be alone in a hotel room or, take myself out to dinner.
Amen.
And those are really honestly fulfilling. I enjoy, spending a night either working because I'm excited about something or reading a book.
Sure.
And which is a great segue. We want to know, here, author Katherine, what do you read? What do you consume, whether it's a podcast or a book or a show? What are you consuming lately?
I am consuming a lot of the history, the plight of, and the lived experience of Black Americans. And I've just started to devour books and podcasts and documentaries. And right now I'm reading Caste. And it's the most enlightening book I have ever read in my entire life. It's like a slow drip because my mind is blown on every page, and it's so extraordinarily well written and exposes a lot of things that I was blind to. And so it's it's life-changing. I can't unsee or unknow what I'm seeing and learning, and so I'm grateful for that. And it's just an extraordinary book.
I love that. We'll make sure to link to it for sure and share it with listeners, and love those recommendations. I just, that kind of word of mouth marketing, talking to people like yourself and hearing, Nate's going to say that this is what what are you reading lately, Nate?
Right.
Actually, you have these little anecdotes in here, like in the front cover. And I'm curious for you, like, when you were writing this, what part of the book or what sentence or paragraph is your absolute favorite, where you're that's this book, or that's me, and you get most excited about in your writing? Do you have one of your quotes in here that you...
I was just thinking I'm going to try and find one, but the thought that came to mind was the thing that really sold the book. I mentioned that the proposal. So for nonfiction, when you sell to a top publisher, you're actually selling a proposal, not the manuscript itself. So the proposal was rejected for 4 years, 23 publishers. And the thing that changed it was a new agent and I really honing in on this idea of the difference between struggling and suffering, and that the struggle is real in all of our lives, but the suffering is optional. And so that, just as a concept, was really powerful. And it was something that a lot of the publishers hadn't, thought of before, heard before. And so I love that. I don't think I'll be able to find this funny.
I thought the one, like, where you said it's time to shift from a warrior to a warrior, right? The WORRIER to a warrior.
A mouthful.
Just some of those helpful, like.
Should try recording this. I recorded the audio of that, and when I was saying that, I was like, warrior.
I love that. Though. I was like, oh, that's so clever and appropriate, and especially, I mean, even for a man, and a husband, to be able to. And that's one thing I am going to finish reading this book, and because I think it does provide a lot of insight into kind of how to be an active listener for your wife as well, and how to offer some, that's for me, is like when they come and talk to, you're like, I want to be there. I want to listen, but like, empathy is not my strong suit sometimes, or what to say is not my strong suit. So, reading this book in the vein of like, how do I not only overcome my own self-doubt, but how do I kind of help and be more empathetic and more of an active listener for my wife as well?
I love that.
Yeah, it can be eye-opening for men. Even I'll never forget, actually a client, CPG client, head of shopper marketing at one of the big companies in Bentonville. And he came through one of our mom immersion sessions, again, about consumerism, but also about their lives in general. And he pulled me aside and he said, oh my gosh, I have so much like empathy for my wife right now. And he was like, I don't think I really realized all that she's doing and how hard it is and this emotional doubt,
Mm.
sitting on top of it. And he looked at me and said, "You've just made me a better husband."
Aw,
And I
that's
was like,
amazing.
yes,
That's cool.
but that was the two worlds kind of combining. But it's interesting. He didn't know, and he hadn't seen it. And again, so much of this
Yeah,
is silent.
it
And
is.
so men
Yeah.
are not mind readers,
No, we like to think
And
that they
not
are.
the best listeners.
Yeah.
That's what's so great about women. It's like we don't tell anybody what we're thinking, then we're all mad when they don't
Right.
know.
Yeah. No, that's really, thoughtful of us. Yes. I like that idea, Nate, of, just active listening in general, which I think is something that we can all improve on. The thing that I'm not so much devouring, but I'm really fired up and won't stop yapping about, besides Katherine, is something called the Crew, CRU, that I've joined recently. It's sort of an annual program, and you are basically matched with 7 to 9 other women across the U.S. It is 60% women of color, which was, like you, very appealing to me in terms of like, let me get outside of the people I'm around every single day and get some fresh perspective. But what's neat about it is that you set, I should call mine slays, but you set goals or intentions for yourself.
Okay.
And then, you meet regularly with this group and they hold you very accountable, astonishingly accountable. There's no like wiggling out of what you said last time that you were going to do. They're like, well, you said you were going to do that, like, let's go. But my point there is that the first session we did, they really walked us through some active listening tips. And because I think most of the women in this group and the Crew are, they're high achievers, or they're, very like aggressive. They're, I don't want to say climbers in a social sense, but they have aspirations, they have intentions and goals and things that they want to do in the world. And Tiffany Dufu, who leads the group, said, you're going to want to go in here and just solve and use all of your wealth of experience for these women and tell them how they should cope with this or that. And so true, right? You listen to another woman talking about what she wants to achieve, and you're mentally like, well, you need to do this and you need to do this and you need to do this, and here's how I would do it. And she really kind of encouraged us to just turn all of that off. And
that's so great.
Yes, and to ask questions, and to say, to just explore deeper. So long-winded here, but at the end of that coaching session where we learned how to be active listeners and to kind of be present for the other team members, I went home to my teen daughter that night, and she started talking to me about her college choices, where she's going to be graduating a year early, and we're now exploring like all of these things that we thought were a long ways off. And I wanted to mom her, right? I wanted to say, well, if you look at that school, you need to consider this. And, are you sure you would be happy there? And I just took that active listening lens and asked her probing questions. And it turned into one of the most meaningful conversations that we have had, because it wasn't one-sided. I wasn't momming her. I was momming her, trust me. But I was listening to her and understanding why she was making some of the choices she was making and what was meaningful for her. And so I bring that all back to what you're doing.
Well, I'm going to write about that in my next book, I swear.
Oh, I love it.
That is so interesting too, because then, ultimately you're getting more out of it. She's getting more out of it. But what's really happening right there is you're not making it about you. And that's as mothers so many times where it's like, well, I have to correct you. I have to do this. If I don't, sway her here to think this or do that, she's going to end up in a trash can.
Exactly.
And, it's this fast forwarding of like this doomsday future, but then in a lot of our egos, if we don't think enough of ourselves on the inside, we have to get it from other people. So our ego is caught up in being this disciplinarian, as opposed to maybe I do just need to listen.
Absolutely.
Right now.
So hard.
It is.
I know.
Spouses
so
and parents.
Hard to do with kids,
and with kids. Oh my goodness. Yeah. But I think you are really equipping, readers and listeners, and dare I say followers, people who just are tuning into you, Katherine, with these so practical, very real tools and mechanisms that they can apply to their life. So I'm just excited for more people to, learn to slay.
My last question,
Yes.
Katherine, is, if we have any listeners that are really intrigued by, the conversation today, or maybe struggling with self-doubt or something like that, have some dragons they want to slay, where should they go? How do they get started?
I would definitely get started with the book itself. And if you are a paperback person, it's in paperback, hardback, but you can also listen to it. It's available on Audible, and it's actually my voice. I was the narrator.
We were just going to ask. We care about who
I can read you your bedtime stories. No, and so that can be interesting because you can just let it wash over you, and a lot of people will just kind of be exposed to it and take it in, because people are at a different part on your journey. If you just want to hear about it and see if it resonates with you and how to make changes. And there's other people that'll be like writing on every page, and they're in the margins and just different styles. But and then also on slaylikeamother.com, like you all were saying earlier, we have a newsletter, but also, as Bethany was saying, like thousands of slays, you can search them, if you want to figure out how to slay dinner time, how to slay getting divorced, how to slay COVID.
That's the gateway drag. I think if people will go to your website, they immediately see all of these practical things that they can do right now. And I think if that doesn't get you fired up about reading the book and seeing that this is a very different book and mindset, I don't know what would. So this has been so fun. I could talk to you all day. I often do.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Katherine.
Yeah, Katherine, thanks for joining us on Social Proof. And I can't wait to see you in person again really soon. Take care, my friend.
Thanks for having me.